All right, this will feel familiar, which is it's early. Some of you might be slightly hungover, and information is going to come at you like a fire hose. So I have like 10 minutes to cover all of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and the economy. So we're going to cover all of those really quickly. So let me start by establishing my expertise in this area. I teach a class in fintech, which is, you might think that qualifies me as an expert, not quite. Here's my quote from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, roughly alumni weekend 5 years ago. So yeah, technically speaking, this is perfectly true. It is hard to imagine that any of this works, right? The financial economics has been ticking along for a long time now. The Federal Reserve started in like 1913. Banking crises used to be common. We sort of settled down the monetary system. What could we possibly improve on that? That must have been what I was thinking if I went back and talked to the Bryan Routledge of 2013. By the way, the Morewood parking lot was still the Morewood parking lot. The last spring carnival was about this time over on the old campus. So lots changes in 5 years. So why was I wrong, right? Or you could rephrase that as why am I still wrong? I've come to own that. Okay, so had we bought Bitcoin when I'd said that, you'd be all quite wealthy. Had I bought Bitcoin last year about this time, when somebody said, can you go teach a class in fintech? And I said, yeah, how hard can it be? Had I purchased at $500, it would have sold at $17,000 in December. It's back to $8,000. It's kind of crazy. What's going on here? So here's what's kind of weird about this, and this is from some introspection of when you think about stuff you see that happens in innovation, it often looks ridiculous, right? Think of the early days of the web when someone put a webcam on a coffee maker, right? And so I could, in my office, see a picture of a coffee maker and know whether or not it was empty or not. And you go, oh, that's kind of cool, you can do that, but get out of your office, walk down, dude, how hard can it be, right? And what I was missing was the fact that that's just the beginning. You start putting these network effects together, and now I have a wired doorbell that I can use to announce my presence when I come home. It says the wizard of the house has arrived. And it took me 2 weekends to get it to do that, so I'm pretty proud of that. But lots of these early things look really dumb, right? And so the theme of my 10 minutes is Bitcoin whatever. It's just the beginning, right? I think there's a whole bunch coming we haven't heard about yet that as this sort of stuff comes together. So Bitcoin's going to try and replace money, right? So does it replace money? Well, what is money, right? Is what's partly cool about teaching fintech is you get to talk about money and banking, and most students find it really boring, but it's really interesting to an economist. But now it's all hip again because it's fintech. So you just, it's like a little quick relabel to your notes, and suddenly all this old stuff from graduate school is like, wow, this is really cool, right? It's not often, right, you can get people to say excited when you say, what is money, right? What's really going on? So if you look at paper money in the upper left-hand corner, it's weird, right? Paper money, it's pieces of paper. We trade them for $100. It's worth $100. It's a piece of paper. Are you insane? There's no value to that. The only value to that is we think people are going to use it down the road, right? What is the money doing for us? One is it's like this unit of account, lets us count things. So money has to be nice and divisible, right? So a $100 bill, $1. The second is it's got to be a medium of exchange. It's really quick, right? You can pay somebody. Nobody uses $100 bills. $100 bills are only used by drug dealers, and the supply of $100 bills is way higher now than it was when you were in school, and it's all off in foreign drug dealer accounts, but that's an aside. But it's really easy to go buy your cup of coffee really quick, right? Think of all these transactions. We don't have to get together and trade physical goods. Most of us don't use money anymore, physical pieces of paper. Most of us use the financial institution, right? We buy our coffee with our Apple Watch. What's that? That's just, my account at PNC is just a big list of debits and credits as to who I own, like that. Wiggle Whiskey, by the way, also works as money. You're right at the heart of the Whiskey Rebellion. Part of the Whiskey Rebellion as the evil people in Philadelphia were coming across to beat up on Pittsburgh. Not much changes over the day. was we were making whiskey, and whiskey was being used as money. Works perfectly well as money. What makes it work as money? It's relatively easy to transact. You can tell if it's whiskey or water. Right? Even it's not hard to sort of get the proofness of your whiskey. It's a store of value. You can hold it onto it for a period of time, and it's relatively homogeneous. Right? It sort of works nicely as money. So the cool thing about Bitcoin is, can you do all of this without any pieces of paper? Right? And that's the insane thing, where you think, that's really a dumb idea. This works perfectly fine. But that's not really sort of how you want to think if you're doing an innovator. Right? My doorbell at home worked perfectly fine. I took it apart. It was broken for 2 weeks. It now works. And right, I've learned something. Right? So this is, can we actually add Bitcoin to it? And the idea is, can we do transactions? Can we do this kind of store of value virtually? And it's hard. So the transaction bit is relatively straightforward. It's complicated but straightforward. When you stick your credit card into a machine, lots of magic is happening to check that the credit card belongs to you, that the money transfers to some account. That sort of cryptography we sort of understand. The hard part is the store of value. Right? Why do you keep money in a bank account? Why do you keep money in dollar bills? Why do you keep money in stores of whiskey? Right? And, I don't know how big your stores of whiskey are at home, but you never know when the apocalypse is coming. We might go back to trading whiskey. Can you actually store value in the computer? And this is where the blockchain comes in. So this is where I'm going to try and explain all of the blockchain in like 18 seconds. It's kind of hard. And so the idea is basically what we're going to do is keep track of this, these accounts in, they call it a ledger. Right? So you've all heard of Bitcoin mining, by the way. Sounds pretty cool and exotic. You know what they're really doing? Accounting. You tell the kids over in the computer science, hey, that's really cool, the accounting you're doing. I don't do accounting, I do Bitcoin mining. You're keeping track of who owes what to whom. You're doing accounting, right? So, how many of you guys remember Yuji Ujiri? Right? Yuji Ujiri invented this like in the 1940s, right? Triple entry bookkeeping. Right now we call it blockchain, right? The idea is basically the books we're going to keep, it's going to be distributed. And so the idea is who owns all of these Bitcoins, or just the ledgers of, think of your bank statement, stick it all over the place. And the question is, can you make that work? Or, right? Can I do this without having to trust the financial institution holding the accounts works? And the way they do it is basically distribute this across. So lots of people are doing this. And then you add a little bit of economics to it. And you make what an economist would call this incentive compatible. So here's the big insight to Bitcoin, which is what you want to do is you want to make it hard to cheat. And so the idea is the idea of a blockchain is things are linked with a key. So the first block that's over there at the left, what you do is you take the block, you take all those transactions, and you calculate a number. Right? It's called a hash or a key. And it's relatively easy to calculate this thing. It's relatively hard to uncalculate this thing. Right? So it's like cracking an egg. You can crack an egg, you can't uncrack an egg. And the idea is you keep this little hash thing calculated, and it carries forward, and it shows up in this next one, it shows up in the next one. So if you wanted to go back 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 years, and move some money out of my account, the amount of work you would have to do computationally to update the ledger across this is infeasible. Right? So that's what they're using, this sort of cryptography you have to buy into. So instead of having to buy into the US financial system as something that's going to be stable, you have to buy into cryptography, which has some math you can verify. This little cryptographic, this is a little web page you can do. You can take welcome Tepper alumni, and that is the hash that pops out of that. That's the big complicated number that comes out. Here's the thing, is I can add an exclamation point on the end of alumni, and that hash changes dramatically. That's the sense in which is one way you can't go backwards. So that's really cool. Does this work? We need like another 15 minutes, 3 hours to get through the details on it. Here's what's cool about that, which is you figure out how to do, and this is what Bryan Routledge in 2013 was naively ignorant about, which is you can do all that keeping track of stuff, accounting going on, but instead of keeping track of ledgers, keep track of code. So instead of putting I owe you $5, you owe me $4 on the code, let's write a contract. So this is like little JavaScript stuff. You stick that up there, And that's where lots of the innovation is happening, which is that same technology keeps track of this. Instead of keeping track of who owes what, keeps track of a bunch of little JavaScripts, and you run them. And that is basically all of the sort of innovation that's coming in the area of fintech is coming in sort of down these areas, which is moving money around. Like blockchain is kind of, it's interesting. Does it work? I don't know. It's a bit like the coffee pot in the sense of, wow, it's cool. I kind of made that work. What can we do from that going forward? So here's a graph, I'll end here, which is these are a whole bunch of money that has been raised. Money, throw it in quotes, it's measured in Bitcoins. $7 billion has been raised in terms of what's called initial coin offerings. These are startup businesses. Here's the interesting fact to take away. To start up one of these businesses, what's it cost you? It's like on the order of $50,000, right? You don't need venture capital, you don't need, right? You barely need a bank account. $50,000 is really small. You launch your IPO, $7 billion is, I don't know, about a third of the IPO market. It's maybe a quarter of the venture capital space, so it's, small, but it's pretty sizable. Here's the thing to notice. This all happened in December of last year, right? That $7 billion was just recently, right? So I started teaching, getting organized for my class, I don't know, maybe this time last year, this has all sort of happened. Every one of these businesses you see, almost all of them are going to fail, right? Who knows? Somewhere in here is the next Amazon. That's what's coming. Okay, I'll pause. Thank you.